Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Your Excellency Nicolas GALEY, Madame GALEY, and Alexei Shatatinsky, the Consul General of France at Karachi in Pakistan, Senior Vice Chairman, distinguished members, and ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum, good morning, and bonjour, and bienvenue. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome you all at the residence of the Father of the Nation. Today's program is very brief. Our Senior Vice Chairman, Mr. Liaquat Merchant, will welcome His Excellency, and after that we'll have a short address by His Excellencies, followed by a brief session of question and answer, and then there will be concluding remarks by the Vice Chairman, Mr. Ikram Sehgal. May I now request our Senior Vice Chairman, Mr. Liaquat Merchant, to come and welcome and introduce His Excellency.
Ambassador GALEY, Mrs. GALEY, Consul General for France to Pakistan, Ikram Sehgal, Vice Chairman, retired Commodore Sadeed A Malik, Nadira Panjwani, Vice Chairperson of Karachi Council, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum and good morning to you. My address is going to be brief, and the purpose is mainly to welcome the new ambassador to Pakistan, Ambassador GALEY, and the new Consul General. But I must tell you in a few words the background and history of this building which you are visiting today. This property was purchased by Mr. Jinnah in 1943, intending to be his personal residence. At that time, Pakistan had not yet come into being. So he decided that he liked this place. He bought it from a Parsi gentleman. And he expressed a desire that this is where he would like to live after Pakistan became a reality. Well, it was not to be, because when he came here, he had to live in the Governor General's house, which is not far from here. So this property was vacant. And ultimately, when Mr. Jinnah passed away in 1948, his sister Fatima Jinnah was allowed to live in this property by the government. So Miss Fatima Jinnah lived in this property from the time Mr. Jinnah died until 1964, when she moved to Mortar Palace. Now, very briefly, this house was sold by the administrators of the estate of Mr. Jinnah, that's myself. I sold this property to the federal government of Pakistan under the orders of the Sindh High Court, and certain conditions were laid down how the property would be used by the government. Well, they restored the property back, but the purposes laid down by the High Court were not implemented. Ultimately, under the 18th Amendment, this property was transferred to the Sindh government, and the Sindh government proved to be more cooperative and very helpful. And they entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Jinnah Society and the Karachi Council on Foreign Relations, which was then headed by Mr. Ikram Sehgal as the chairman. Well, we signed the MOU under which the property was transferred and control management was given to us, the two sponsors, Jinnah Society and Karachi Council. And then the Sindh government issued a notification to validate the MOU. So we are here in management and control of this property, in conjunction with the Sindh government, who are the real owners, and we are authorized to carry on multiple activities here, but intended mainly to promote the principles, ideals, and vision of Mr. Jinnah as a nation-building exercise in Pakistan. Now, there's a reason why we are emphasizing on nation-building and propagating Mr. Jinnah's principles, ideals, and vision. The reason being that 60% of our population in Pakistan is under the age of 26 or 27, or say under 30. And they have no idea why Pakistan was created, who was behind it, and what Pakistan was intended to achieve. So this is what we are trying to propagate and educate and instill in the minds of our younger generation of 60% of people in Pakistan. All about Mr. Jinnah, his struggle for Pakistan, what Pakistan was intended to achieve, and whether we did or we did not, and more importantly, why the idea of Pakistan will never die. So these are our efforts. This is our principle that we are trying to achieve. With that end in view, we organize programs. We have and will continue doing it. We have a short tenure of 4 years. Maybe it will be renewed by the Sindh government. But we have programs here to educate our youth. We have declamations, elocutions, talks, lectures, including talks by parliamentarians, political leaders, diplomats, ambassadors, and film shows. And one of our biggest projects is the one which was prepared and formulated and planned by our Vice Chairman Ikram Sehgal is to have, and that is to have an underground auditorium behind the property, which would house a Jinnah library, an auditorium, an audiovisual center, and to add to that, we have now decided to install a digital archives center. So it's a very ambitious program that we are trying to achieve, and let's hope that we are able to do it. We expect funding from the Sindh government, which is on its way, it's been sanctioned, and we look forward to making this effort on our part a success. With these few words, I will now request Ambassador GALEY to address this audience and give us his views. Mr. Ambassador.
Mr. Chairman and Vice Chairman and members of the board of this council and dear friends, well, happy first of all to come here with my wife and our new Consul General, Alexei Shatatinsky, whose name you pronounced with an incredible facility. It took me a few days to be able to do it. Mine is more simple. We are finishing a very interesting visit in Karachi. My first visit to Karachi. I arrived in Pakistan at the end of January, and although there were several attempts to travel out of Islamabad, for some reasons it proved not possible. So I was really anxious to come here, and we were not at all disappointed. This is a fascinating city, such an active, vibrant city with a lot of activities and energy. And also, obviously, that's where we are at this moment, historic monuments. We just visited the mausoleum of Mr. Jinnah this morning, a very moving and beautiful monument. And we are now in this house, and I can only support and encourage the project that you just described. There is a historian who says that those who ignore history are condemned to go through it again. And I think it's very important that, as you mentioned, especially in a country with a very young population like Pakistan, the current generations know about the past and how Pakistan was created and who played, of course, the essential role in this history. Actually, something we often recall and remind in our speeches as French diplomats here is that France was the first non-Muslim country to establish diplomatic relations with Pakistan. So that brings us back again to these historic times. And it's a fact that, of course, at the time the embassy was here in Karachi, and I asked, when I met with the chief minister 2 days ago, I asked him and with our consul where the French embassy was in Karachi at that time, and they couldn't answer immediately, but if anyone has the answer to this question, we would be interested to see the house, if it still exists, or at least the location where the embassy was. So, to talk about the relations between France and Pakistan, and going back, of course, to the very origin of this at the time of the independence of Pakistan, but certainly more importantly, more recent aspects of it. I'd like to say, first of all, that after 10 months now, 9 months in Pakistan, I really feel a desire from everyone, all my interlocutors, to restore good relations after a difficult period. Everybody knows what happened at that time, and that everyone, be it from the government, in the ministries, in all other sectors, and cultural sector in particular, but also the economy, want to turn that page, and that normal relations between France and Pakistan mean good relations, and even more than that. And obviously, as an ambassador in Islamabad and my colleague here, consul in Karachi, we're very keen and continuing to restore this good relation. It has already started, and I think it was demonstrated very recently by the meeting between President Macron and Prime Minister Sharif in New York on 20th of September, and the statement, the joint statement they made at this at the end of this meeting about the organization of a conference to help Pakistan cope with this terrible event, and especially in Sindh, you know what it means, that have affected the country at the end of August. And by the way, it happens as a coincidence that I am in Karachi when there was a second phase of our humanitarian aid that arrived at the airport the day before yesterday, and I met the team yesterday at the Marriott Hotel. I think now they are on their way to Dadu, and they are bringing a machine an equipment that transforms or that purifies dirty waters into drinkable water, producing 250,000 liters per day. And I think it will be, in these difficult circumstances, an important contribution to help the affected populations, who are unfortunately millions. There was already at the beginning of the month of September a first team who came with small water pumps, 83 if I remember well, and also medics who were in their case in Badin. So that's, of course, the donors conference will be an expression of solidarity on the mid and long term, but this is an expression of very concrete solidarity with people coming from France to help, since we still are somewhat in the emergency phase of the international response. And we will obviously also participate in many other appeals from mostly UN, but also EU organizations to help Pakistan in these difficult times. In a way, sad events can be also an opportunity in this effort that both countries wants to make to, again, entertain very good relations, to express this will in a very concrete way. There were, well, after I arrived here, as I said about 9 months ago, there were obviously good reasons to try and identify the fields of cooperation and improvement that we could find between France and Pakistan. And again, I found a very responsive and positive approach from all my interlocutors. Of course, the economy and trade. And yesterday here in Karachi, I had participated in the board of the Pakistan-France Business Alliance, who is kind of a chamber of commerce. And I find all the members very enthusiastic that this association can participate in the restoration of good and active relations between businesses from France and Pakistan. There is in particular an economic sector in which I think we have a lot to do, and this is agriculture. France is obviously an important country in this regard, production and research, and Pakistan is also a big agri-power, fifth or sixth world producer of milk, and the sector of dairy products is certainly one where we can have a very good cooperation between our two countries. I also realized that although in the past there were thousands of Pakistani students studying in France, the figures have gone down and considerably declined, since we have at the moment about 200 students who go to France every year to study, which is, for instance, 3 times less than the number of students going to Sweden. And very happy, of course, for the Swedes to receive Pakistani. But when we compare ourselves to Germany, for instance, which is not an English-speaking country, we realize that the Germans welcome more than 4,000 students every year, when we are, as I said before, 200. And one effort we have to make on both sides is to make Pakistan better known by French universities, and that's the reason that 5 university teams from France will come early November and meet with the Pakistani universities, so they can see and discuss what kind of curriculum would match their needs, and also from the Pakistani side. And we are in very close contact with the Higher Education Commission about this, to make studies in France better known, and in particular the fact that we now have hundreds of training and curricula which are taught in English, which means that the problem of which could be to have a full command of the French language is no longer and should no longer be an obstacle. I mentioned also, when I was speaking of the economy, I think that also it would be important. It happened in the past, but then COVID came and other events, and so it didn't produce a lot of results to bring a delegation of our business association, which is called MEDEF, and they make that kind of visit with representatives of all the economic sectors of the French economy to bring a delegation from this group here in Pakistan. So they have a better idea of what is the Pakistani economy today. So there are also, obviously, between governments, political cooperation, and we had the opportunity with the 2 high-level visits between our foreign ministries, one Pakistani visit to France and one French visit to Pakistan recently, to explain our views on a lot of subjects of common interest. We are obviously very interested in getting Pakistani views on the situation in Afghanistan. Pakistanis are interested to know, understand the various approaches in France, in Europe, and the rest of the world of the concept of Indo-Pacific. So that is also an important subject we have to exchange between us in order to dissipate misunderstandings. And any other international question that represents a challenge for the world, and obviously our position on the Ukrainian conflict, or Russian-Ukrainian conflict, is a subject that we discuss, I wouldn't say daily, but several times per week with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and other authorities here, so that the French, European, and NATO position is well understood, and that the draft resolutions we present, or others present at the General Assembly of the United Nations, get the largest support, and we were happy that the last one was very widely supported. Also not by Pakistan, but the global figure was very, the global result was very good. I think that, as it was proposed, the best way to continue and have an exchange on French-Pakistani relations is to have an interaction with all of you. So I would be happy to respond, or try and respond to your questions. But I would like to thank you for taking the time on a Saturday morning to meet with me and my colleague. I'm now at your disposal if you want to answer any question. I just want to stress one last point, which is obviously very important for a member of the European Union, that our relations with Pakistan are both bilateral and Euro-Pakistani. As you know, the trade regulations between European Union members and third states are regulated from Brussels. And there is a very important negotiation that Pakistan is going through with Brussels regarding this scheme called GSP+, a very important system that allows Pakistan to export to the European Union tariff-free. The first phase of this agreement will end at the end of 2023. There is a new agreement to be discussed and signed to continue the scheme, but it's not just a renewal, it's another type of agreement. And we obviously support very much the efforts of Pakistan to be able to reach this agreement with Brussels, and we obviously also support the European Commission in this effort. There were many delegations coming to Islamabad in the last weeks to discuss that. It's a trade agreement, but it also pertains to other subjects related to international conventions to be signed by the parties who have that kind of GSP Plus agreement. And that's why these delegations from Brussels came in the past week. So again, I want to stress the fact that the relations between Pakistan and any member of the European Union should be seen through the bilateral prisma, of course, but also through the relations with Brussels, which counts for so much now in our foreign political and trade policy. Thank you very much. And now I'm ready from here or from the, I don't know, as you like, to answer your questions. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Mubashir Mir. I am editor of a Urdu newspaper, Daily Pakistan, here in Karachi. Excellency, you are welcome here in Karachi. I would like to ask a simple question about the Islamophobia. We always consider French society as very liberal and very vibrant society. But when we heard about the news regarding the Islamophobia, what are the reasons behind this? And kindly enlighten us, what is the present situation right now?
Thank you, but I will answer as much as I can. But when you are referring to news that you receive about Islamophobia in France, I believe, what are you referring to in particular? Because there are many things that we read and which, for those who live in France or know France, doesn't really match with what we know. So what do you put under the expression?
Actually, when we heard the news about some hate publication, some hate material which was published, and then there were riots and so many events that have been happened in France, and this protest which was observed in previous years. So that's why I am asking about this has been discussed on the international level as well, and also in the United States. The previous Prime Minister of Pakistan, Ikram, pointed out, and then 15th of March has been declared as the day when we will address this task will not be tolerable, and this is the reason. When people are something writing about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the whole Muslim Ummah will not accept these kind of things. Yeah.
Thank you for enlightening me, because you want me to enlighten you. But what your answer explains what you hear about so-called Islamophobia, but it doesn't give me the kind of event which would demonstrate that there is in all countries in the world, I'm afraid, and unfortunately, discrimination and racism that happens everywhere. And certainly we have very strict laws to combat this. We have about between 5 and 6 million Muslims in France, including my own wife. And the notion that there is and which is spread by many media, in Pakistan and other countries, that there is, for instance, I sometimes read on Twitter or things like that it is forbidden in France for women to wear a veil, which is totally untrue. But that's the thing that make people think that this phenomenon exists. Then we may have different notions of what freedom of expression may mean, and of course we have to discuss about that. And when you are referring to the resolution at the General Assembly of the UN, we have obviously absolutely no problem with any text that says that any manifestation of discrimination, of hostility to to Islam should be combated and to be fought. That's absolutely obvious. But where I am a bit puzzled sometimes with this question is that, which is very frequent, is that the expression is used as if it was a given fact. And when we ask, but please tell us exactly when, where, and what happened, I'll give you a counter-example. After we had terrible terrorist attacks in Paris and in Nice, in the south of France in 2015, 2016, there was a real fear, of course, from everyone that there could be some revenge against a particular big Muslim community we have, although we don't like the expression community in our Republican view of citizenship, but I use it. And I think that it was a very reassuring, and I would say we were quite proud that nothing like that has happened. We had these terrible attacks in the Bataclan Theater and in the Stade de France Stadium, and then later in Nice, where this man took a truck and killed 86 people. There could have been some, retaliation. That never happened, which I think show that there is no intention to associate those who use terrorism as a weapon and the rest of those who believe in a religion and who are perfectly assimilated in the French nation. So that's also an aspect that is, of course, we say that we talk only about the trains who arrive late and not on those who arrive on time. The good thing, I think, in France and in Europe in general is the very good integration of diverse religions who were not originally in Europe. And Islam, of course, is the most important of all of them. It's the second religion in France. When this presentation of Islamophobia as a given fact needs to be substantiated, and I'm happy that it is not very substantiated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellency, coordinator has already said that I'm vice chairman and a former civil servant. My question is, in your opinion, what are the chances of a nuclear showdown in Ukraine? A nuclear showdown. And if that happens, it's very worrisome. And if that happens, what do you think will be the consequences? And why has the West poked the grizzly bear in its eyes? Poked the grizzly bear in its eyes. And what are the chances of a nuclear showdown in Ukraine? And what will be the consequences? Thank you.
Well, we're not speak extensively on this subject, which is obviously not in my competence here as ambassador in Pakistan, but certainly give you the position regarding the chances. I'm not sure it would be a chance, by the way, but of a nuclear conflict. I think many things have been said by world leaders on the fact that it would be obviously a catastrophic development. The chances, I'm not, again, in a position to comment on that part of the conflict. When you say, I can take your expression about the can you develop a little bit what you mean with this nice expression? Thank you.
All that Putin was wanting, that Ukraine should be a buffer state between the West and the East. And why was that not acceptable to the West? I mean, the NATO countries had progressively encroached upon the Warsaw Pact countries, including countries like Poland, etc. And then I think this was the last straw on the back of the camel as far as Russia is concerned. So what was the necessity? Why couldn't the West agree to have a buffer state between Russia and the West?
Well, that's your view of how things happened. Actually, Ukraine was not an accepted candidate to NATO, and there was a very clear position on this. It was a candidate to the EU, and apparently even Russian official statements have said that it would not be a problem in their view, although it will be a very long process, because to be a member of the EU for a country like Ukraine, of course, Ukraine has been accepted as candidate, but then you have a lot of steps to follow. Then, as you certainly know, the Russian aggression on the Ukrainian territories don't go back to the 24th of February. They started in 2014. This is a conflict that has caused the deaths of nearly 15,000 people in eastern Ukraine. The last step was this totally illegal annexation of the provinces. Ukraine is a sovereign state. They have the right to decide with whom they want to be associated with what the kind of organization. And we believe that any dispute, even if we can have, and there were previous events in Georgia in 2008, as you may remember, and then also you have different frameworks for discussions with the Russians, one of them being the Minsk group, which once was part of. This should be the right place to discuss the differences. We believe that a dispute when the country is not in a situation of being itself, of course, attacked, and I don't think that anyone has ever tried to say that Ukraine attacked Russia, is not settled by a military attack, by a military aggression. So for a permanent member of the Security Council like Russia, who should be the forefront of the promotion of the Charter of the United Nations, which clearly states that international disputes should be settled peacefully, it is a clear breach to have started this war. Maybe they believed it would be a relatively short conflict, and to the surprise of many, it is not going to be a short conflict. We will see what happens. I hope, obviously, that the possibility that you mentioned precisely is not a possibility, and that it would not go to this extreme, and that reason and international law prevail.
My name is Farooq Afzal.
Yes.
I'm the member board of governors of Karachi Coastal Foreign Relations. My question is with regards to the business and investment with France, Pakistan and France. In 2019, there was a delegation from MEDEF, and I also met with them in Karachi at the residence of the Consul. And in 2021, there was also a webinar which was held in Paris with MEDEF, and it was decided and it was offered to the business community of the France that we have like 22 special economic zones which were offered to the business community of the France to invest in Pakistan. And also we offered that we can make a special economic zone only for France as well. This was also discussed at that time. There we have like huge potential, like in information technology, travel and tourism, food processing, and agriculture sector. We want to learn something from France, that how we can also do dairy products, because though we are fifth largest milk producing country, but tons and tons of milk is being wasted. So how you see that? Another thing is that so far we have hardly direct investment, $1.5 billion from the France. How we can, do you think that in your tenure, you will help us to get the investment, direct investment, and some more investment, like as I mentioned, the fields. How soon it can be done? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for saying many things that I myself found very important about more cooperation in the economic field in general and agriculture in particular. I think the first step is to know each other more. The fact is that for all kinds of reasons, these stronger relations we had in the 80s, 90s are not the same today, and contacts and links have to be re-established. You mentioned the MEDEF visit, and then we had the COVID, etc. But as I said, my objective is to have, not through webinar, but a real visit in person of a representative of the MEDEF. And also that Pakistani businessmen go to France. There are very little Pakistani investment in France today. That also can be developed. And I'm sure that in this particular sector of dairy products, we have a lot to do, and we have big companies that have a very high reputation, like Danone, for instance, and I would like very much to have them come here. You know that France is a country of 360 cheeses, and there is also a lot to do here in Pakistan to make more from the milk than it is done now. So yeah, a very important aspect for French companies is to know better the market. It's also important for these companies to have a, obviously certainly know this doing business ranking, which makes a world ranking of how easy or uneasy it is for foreign companies to invest and to export. And there are some aspects about legal predictability, fiscal aspects, repatriation of dividends or of profits, which has to be, of course, very clear for an investor. And all countries are in competition on this today. That's why this doing business is a very interesting document, because a company that want to invest in that part of the world, for instance, will look, of course, that ranking and see where it is which country is the easiest destination in terms of legal and fiscal regulations. So that we have to promote, but I think also Pakistani companies and Pakistani embassy in Paris and have to do that. It's a joint effort because, of course, it's a mutual benefit. It's good for Pakistan to have more exchanges, and it's good for us to export more. And we also have this very positive scheme that I mentioned with Pakistan GSP Plus, which means that all your products, but not only textile, although textile represents about 80%, but all kinds of products can be exported to the EU with a zero tariff. And Pakistani companies could take even more advantage than now of this system, which is very advantageous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Excellency, I am a
Chair is member of Board of Governors of the Staff Organizations.
Thank you.
Nicolas, I was in reference to the first question which was there, I would say that wouldn't it be right to say that Le Pen is no more something which the French look to anymore. It is something of the past, and it is nothing of the present of France or the French population. The other thing was about the lessons that one may have learned in Libya to be applied in subcontinent. When I say subcontinent, I'm talking about Iran, I'm talking about Afghanistan, and the whole rest of the subcontinent itself. That what is the lesson that one can possibly draw from Libyan experience? And also, what is the value of written agreement versus understanding? Because in the case of what the question was asked about Russia, Gorbachev did not have it written down, but it was an understanding that none of when the wall came down, it was an understanding that none of the NATO states, none of the Warsaw states will be allowed to join NATO, and no weapons will be deployed there, but troops will be deployed. But then Poland, Czechoslovakia, and so on started coming to that orbit. So what is really the value of written agreement versus understanding? You understand how does or how should one see things happening?
Thank you. Well, on your second point, I'm sorry, I will not, again, I'm not here in the competence of discussing this story. I'm not going to go back into the origins of the conflict. There is just the fact that Russia has attacked its neighbor, and that is by itself unacceptable. And that's why we are helping the Ukrainians with many other countries. On your first question, I don't really see what you may mean through the lessons of Libya and the subcontinent. Can you elaborate a little bit, please?
You find Libya to be a better place today than it was in the past when Gaddafi was there. In reference to the subcontinent, when I'm saying the subcontinent, if
I will give you a very usual answer from a diplomat. I don't answer to hypothetical questions.
Asif Khan here from Newsman TV Pakistan. I elaborated brilliantly about the ideas of how to strengthen the ties between Pakistan and Iran. My question is about the donors conference. Touch upon donors conference, when and where it will happen, and France will host it. Okay.
So this following the meeting of the French president, the Pakistani prime minister, and their statement on the 20th of September. Now the two governments are discussing how to organize, obviously, this conference, taking into account that there is this is obviously completely unrelated with the flood in Pakistan. A very busy calendar of events in the coming weeks and months. You have the G20, you have the Sharm el-Sheikh, the COP27, I think, conference. A few days before, you had the IMF and World Bank meetings also. So there are many occasions where, of course, they can start to discuss that. But it's really up now to the two governments to discuss that with, of course, other partners. The UN would be a very important one. The World Bank would be an important one, because the World Bank is, as you know, leading the general assessment that is being made about the catastrophic floods here in Pakistan. So this is really a process in the making. So the question, very precise question, when and where, I cannot answer, because I don't think this is already decided. On what we have to do, obviously, is to elaborate on the statement of the two leaders, and that is exactly what we are doing now.
My name is Sadeed A Malik, and I represent Diplomatic Relations magazine. We are all about economy, not about politics. First of all, dear Vinny Karachi.
Merci.
It's a pleasure to listen to you about talking about geopolitical aspect as well as economy. You talked about trade and economy, and in relation to that, you talked about agriculture and the dairy products. We organize events as well, and we organize an event, Mango Festival for diplomats. And
yes, I participated.
Vice Consul General of France was also there, and since we are into trade and business, we asked him about the trade attaché of France. He told us he is based in Islamabad. So this, because Karachi is the base of trade industry, he would be more than happy to welcome a trade attaché to Karachi.
Well, first of all, I participated in the Mango Festival in Islamabad, which was honored by the presence of Mr. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, and of course it was a fantastic tasting of different kinds of mangoes. So even if obviously Karachi is a much more important place in economic terms, we also have mangoes in Islamabad, that's for sure. Second, it would be very good if we also had a permanent presence of an economic section, or a guy from the Islamabad economic section posted here. That's an idea that has been supported by many consul generals, and which certainly would be a good idea because of the importance of Islamabad, of Karachi in terms of economy, and also a very important port, import-export. I mean, there are obvious reasons for having someone like that. We are all constrained by, budgetary and staff realities. I would hope that this is possible in the future, but it is still being studied, so it's not yet decided. But what certainly will happen is that the team in Islamabad, which is not a very big team, there are two of them at the economic section, the economic counselor is with me here in Karachi, and that he will come more often here in Karachi to keep contact and to develop more links. So that's for sure, and that's something we can decide now. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. And finally, may I now request our Vice Chairman of Board of Management, Institute of Nation Building, Quaid-e-Azam House Museum, Mr. Ikram Sehgal, for his conclusion remarks and vote of thanks.
Excellency Nicolas GALEY and Consul General, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you for taking the time to come here. And of course, it is for you to be here at the residence of the Quaid-e-Azam. For us, it's a great honor. I just want to briefly touch upon some of the subjects. First of all, I think one of the major mistakes that Pakistan made both in its foreign policy, but more importantly in its economic policy, is that they never took sight of the fact that in many areas of Africa and other areas, even in French into China, Vietnam, etc., the French influence, and therefore we never really exploited that French influence there. We could have had a lot of collaboration with companies in France to go into Africa, to our own products and things like that. We tried venture like East Africa because of our relationship in the Commonwealth. We had much more relationship, but we never did that with Africa. So I think we have a realization, and that is happening now as we speak on the ground. The other thing which I want to just briefly touch upon was as KCFR is that we are organizing a Eurasian conference in Davos this time, which is basically something between KCFR and Le Havre University. And the reason is very simple. We think Le Havre is the gateway of Europe and from one side, and we think Karachi is the gateway of Asia on the other side, obviously because of our relationship with India. So if you look at now the current situation, the roads that we're going from east to west on the BRI, they actually will pass through Pakistan. They don't have to come down to CPEC. CPEC will be partly used, but they'll go down the RCD highway to Istanbul and on to Europe, etc. So it makes a very important issue that we have this Eurasian conference in which, of course, we have a lot of people who attended a conference of Eurasia in which I participated about 2 months ago in Le Havre University, and and there was a lot of interest in that to build up the two anchors, Le Havre on one side, and then interestingly enough, I think the Secretary General also got an MOU from Le Havre University from ready. You just have to sign it. And in fact, Dr. Huma Baka is not here, but she's the rector of MITE University, and they also have a MOU which has been signed actually, but they're going to have a ceremony very shortly. You talked about investment. I think the Sindh Investment Board division is very much into it. I think a lot of investment, French investment, can come into Pakistan, particularly into Sindh. And obviously, the first step has been made by the great humanitarian assistance that you're giving to Sindh. This is something that is of great help to the people of Sindh, and it is understood and it is recognized here in Sindh that was critical assistance, all the pumps that were given, the doctors that came, etc., etc. And of course, I did not know about the event that came yesterday or day for yesterday, but that also helps because we need, particularly in those areas, we need water to be, made clean water to be available for drinking purposes. I just want to, before I have the last point, I want to talk about roughly something about extremism that was raised, hate and extremism. The type of incident that took place, it would have spread very rapidly if it had not been for the maturity of the French population that confined it only to that particular area and had finished. If that sort of incident, let us say, don't want to give an example, if it happened in Pakistan, then you would have from Karachi to Khyber hate incident. But in that incident, and it was a bad incident, it was confined and contained. It was contained because of the maturity of the French population, which is a large Muslim population. People don't realize it. The largest, in fact, Muslim population in Europe is in France. And the maturity of the population, the integration with society was so much that an odd incident here and there did not, this thing, etc. Such an incident reciprocally would have in any other country like Pakistan or India and all would have spread very rapidly. The chairman, senior vice chairman mentioned about our project here. I got the idea of this project from the Louvre. You know, if you, Excellency, when you came in, you found that there's no parking here. If there's no parking to start with, how do people visit this place? Number one. Number two, what the requirement was to have something to promote the vision of the Qaid, to promote his image, to his this thing, etc. There's no audiovisual center, no auditorium. So, you know, Mr. Liaquat Merchant and we sat down and we came together, Jinnah Society and Krajira, and we said, okay, we'll do that. So we are now in the process of, there is a lot of land behind that to go underground. And in going underground, we plan not only to have an auditorium and an audiovisual center, but also to have a car park, so that you know, this place can accommodate without affecting the building itself, because you do not want to visually affect the building from outside, etc. So we would require your help there, if we can have some expertise at least of you know, how the construction took place, how it was designed, etc. And we have one of the top architects of Pakistan doing a pro bono thing, Mr. Akil Bildrami, who's actually designed something, but maybe we can take some help, like you have been helping out in other areas in culture and heritage, etc. So with that, I will just end with saying something personal. It is really, I think, great honor and privilege to have you, Excellency, here. And really, I mean, we do host a lot of people here, but we've never had the sort of, you know, let us say the closeness, etc. that we liked. And we like to use this platform, and with the new Consul General here, use this platform to promote that friendship, to make sure that we build on that friendship, we build on that friendship on a broader scale. So thank you, Excellency. Thank you, Consul General, for being here. Thank you.